Hi, and welcome back to entp Life. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing and unboxing the Canon EOS M50 mirrorless DSLR camera. Now, here on entp Life, we mostly talk about real estate, business, and anything else that I'm interested in. And since I am a YouTuber and I have this interest in photography and videography, I will be touching in from time to time on new equipment that I purchased and things that I'm trying out to kind of make this channel a little bit better or for better production in whatever it is that I'm shooting. For those of you who already are subscribers of this channel, you know that I am a real estate investor. And one of the things that drives me nuts about selling real estate and listing properties is when agents really don't have a good understanding of how to take interior photos. You see, your picture is going to be the first impression that you can make with any potential buyer. They're searching properties on Zillow, Redfin, or whatever other platform, and that picture needs to pop. And that's one of the reasons that I got interested in photography, was to be able to have a little more control of the final pictures that I put out there. Now, for those of you who are not already subscribers to this channel and you think this content is going to be interesting, please make sure that you hit that subscription button, like this video, and leave your comments in the comment section below. Now, the very first DSLR camera that I ever purchased was a Canon Rebel. Now, the Rebels are like the entry-level DSLR cameras that Canon offers, except now they have this mirrorless line, which I think offers a pretty good alternative with a similar price point and slightly different features. And it really depends on what are your goals with this camera. Now, when I started looking into getting an additional camera, it was just to have an alternative view to this view here. Now, I'm shooting on a Canon 6D, which is a full frame DSLR with mirror camera. And I really like this camera because it shoots incredible pictures, it shoots really good video, and it's kind of like the mid-tier camera that Canon offers. It has a full frame sensor, which means that it allows you to take larger pictures, right? And that's really important when you're shooting photography for real estate, because when you're doing like the wide angle shots that are needed to get like really good spacing and visualization of a room, you need to have a wide lens. And a lot of the wide lenses they produce for Canon are not designed for crop sensors. So it doesn't make sense to have a wide lens camera on a small receiver. So when I decided that I was going to start shooting the interiors of properties, I needed to make the upgrade to get a camera that was not a crop sensor camera. But the issue that I have with this camera is that I only have one of them, right? My other camera, the 60D, is back in New York. I use that whenever I'm in town. And my other camera here in Fort Lauderdale is just like a handheld camcorder. And I really don't like the controls of that camcorder. It doesn't shoot as good a video, and it doesn't give me any control over the depth of field or anything like that. And whenever I was shooting with two cameras, you'd see an obvious drop off in quality. And that's not something that I really wanted to have. And that led me to the M50. I was looking for a camera. Actually, I started looking for a used 6D just so I had two cameras so that there'd be no drop off. But the price point was way more than I'd like to spend. And to get a 6D set up with a lens is about $2,000 or even more. So I was like, you know what, let me not go that route. Let me try to find a cheaper alternative. And that's where I came across the M50. One of the things that stood out to me about the M50, other than the price, was the fact that it was kind of promoted as the vlogger's camera. And I thought, well, if I could use this camera to capture what I tend to do with my 60 and it executes a job, then maybe I could make that my primary camera for these basic videos and kind of shelve my 6D for when I'm going to be doing 2 or more views for a particular video. So let's take a look at the M50. Now, the M and M50, I guess, stands for mirrorless. Most DSLR cameras have a mirror that is actually reflecting to a sensor, or I think that's how it works. And because of that, they're a little bit larger and bulkier, and that can be a little bit of a hassle. So they started to come up with these mirrorless cameras to kind of eliminate that bulk and make it easier for people to kind of walk around with a point-and-shoot camera that had the same controls and same characteristics of your DSLR. Now, you can see that my background's a little blurred out, and if I put my hand forward, I'm probably getting some blur there too. With DSLRs, you're able to control that depth of field. And if you look at all the cell phones, right, over the years, you notice that they've gotten better and better with managing depth of field. Because usually a typical point and shoot camera just has everything in focus. But when you're using a DSLR camera or more professional grade cameras, you're able to control that depth and focus in on the subject, blurring out the background and the foreground, and you get these really professional looking photos. Now these mirrorless lines, suppose they're able to do that with the same effect as a mirror DSLR, except you stand to benefit from a smaller unit. Now I'm looking over the specs. It's a 24.1 megapixel sensor. It also is the crop sensor that I was telling you about, that it's featured in the Rebel line and the non-professional line, so it's a smaller sensor. It also has what's called dual pixel autofocus, which is cool because I could focus on something in the foreground with one pixel and something in the background in the other, and switch between the two rather quickly, which comes into handy if you're really shooting a lot of video and you're trying to direct the viewer to focus on different objects within the same scene. Another cool feature that is reminiscent of my 60D is that it has the LCD screen that you're able to turn and face towards you. So if you're shooting a video like this and you're not sure what the quality looks like, or even if it's recording, because that does happen, you're able to turn that out and have it facing towards you so you can see yourself and how you're positioned in the frame and whether or not your device is recording or if there's anything that's out of whack, rather than waiting until after you've done your video to see that something was wrong. And the last critical feature that I want to talk to you about is that this is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled. So you're going to be able to link this with your smartphone or other devices so that you're able to capture a photo and have it display and even manipulate your camera with your smartphone device. Now let's open this thing up. So what do we have? Okay, some paper that I'm not going to read. I guess this is the limited guarantee or warranty. I never read those things. The user manual, super thick, which means there's a lot to cover, and that's good because when you're starting to shoot and you're trying to get a little more serious about shooting video or pictures, the details are going to vary, and there's going to be more features that allow you to do more things, okay? So if this book was thinner, I would be a little suspect about what kind of control do I have of the final picture or video that I'm going to be putting out there. So having a lot of information really lets me know that I'm able to dive deep, and there's going to be a lot of setting manipulation that I could do. Some other paperwork, and now to the good stuff. So the camera actually comes in a pretty small package compared to a much bulkier DSLR camera, which is pretty good. It feels like an old school point and shoot camera, like when the first digital cameras came out. So there should be some relative ease in holding it and using it. It feels comfortable in your hand. And all the controls are easy to reach. Now, right here is that LCD screen that I was telling you about, that you're able to either have flex back where you're viewing it from the back of the camera, like any standard camera, or you could turn it around, look at it as an extended view, flip it over, and you still have this viewfinder that you could use as well, rather than shooting off of the LCD screen. Also in the box is your charging station. Your, I don't even know what these are called, the hanging device, neck strap. And we have here the kit lens. Now, a lot of people talk badly about kit lenses, and to be honest with you, a kit lens does its job. It allows you to take the camera right out the box and start shooting. It also gives you a fairly flexible range for basic indoor and outdoor zooming, okay? So its range is from 15 millimeters to 45 millimeters, which is gonna be from like slightly wide to almost the portrait view, okay? So I think it's a pretty good range, so you're gonna be able to do quite a bit with this lens, and you're not gonna necessarily have to invest in another lens, but I did invest in another lens because there's something that I wanted to achieve, which is a very blurred background. Now, aperture range on this is f3.5 to f6.3, which means that One, it's not going to produce the sharpest images because the sharpest images are produced from prime lenses. Those are lenses that only have one length. So like a 50 millimeter portrait lens only has one length, and it's going to give you really sharp images. These zoom lenses aren't as good, but they do the trick. And Canon has gotten a lot better with their kit lenses, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this one shoots. Another thing about the aperture opening is that the smaller the number, so like if it's f1.8 for instance, that signals that one, you can open the aperture really wide, and the aperture is more or less like the eyeball or the pupil to the lens. You know when you're in bright light, your pupil gets small, right? And it lets less light in. So aperture is kind of the same way. When it's dark, you open the aperture nice and wide to let as much light in so you can see what you're shooting. So not having like an aperture that goes down to like f2, f1.8 is not that great for low light situations or even shooting at night. So I wanted to get a camera that was both a prime lens, so that meant that the pictures were going to be nice and sharp, and also had a very low aperture number. And the last object in the box is one of these batteries. Now, comparing this battery to what I have on my 6D is a little worrying because it seems kind of tiny, and the 6D's battery goes relatively quickly. So I could only imagine that this battery, being even smaller, unless they have some really cool technology, is going to burn through pretty quickly. Now, I bought this camera on Amazon for just under $700. It retails, the camera alone retails for $599, but I saw a kit that made sense for me. Now, with this kit came a few cleaning objects, a lens cloth, 2 memory cards, and just a few things that I felt that I would need. It also came with a carrying bag and a tripod. So those are all things that I probably would have purchased anyway, and if I bought them separately, would have came out to more than the $80 that I paid for it. I'm gonna include a link in the comment section below that links you back exactly to this package that I bought, and I think it actually offers really good value. Now let's take a look at the lens, which is the EFM 22mm f2 prime lens. Now, I already explained to you what a prime lens is, and I explained to you the importance of having a low f number, okay, for your aperture number. In order to show you how this camera performs, the rest of this video is going to be done with this lens here. But just to show you what the lens looks like, let me pop it out the box. Again, paperwork, which I typically don't read, and the lens, nicely packaged and safe, so it doesn't shatter on its way. I just got to make sure I don't shatter it myself. And if you're going to compare them side by side, one is shorter than the other because it doesn't have the need to be extended or have additional length for zooming and whatnot. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Weight-wise, it's actually almost as heavy as the kit lens. But I think that the fact that it's shorter, it'll probably help be a little more balanced. The downside is if you buy this extra lens, which I believe I paid $200 or $250 for, it's obviously going to take the entire bundle up to close to the $1,000 mark, which is still more than 50% cheaper than if I had to replicate my current setup. So this is still a value add as far as I'm concerned. From here on out, the video is going to be shot on this new camera, and we're going to be able to compare how the previous video looks, which is on my 6D, to the M50. Exciting times. Oh, this is recording. And this is the video on the M50. So I have the aperture open at 2.0. So I was expecting the background to be a little more blurred, and that might be because it's mirrorless or because of the crop sensor that we're not getting as much of that blurring of the background. Because if I had my 50mm lens on my 6D and I had it at a 2.0 aperture, the background will be way more blurred out than it is now. And that's just from my perception of the LCD screen that I'm looking at off to the side. It doesn't look like the bokeh, as they call it, is that blurred out. Overall, the video quality is pretty good. It's better than my other Canon handheld camcorder, but it's not quite where my 60 would be. I did a few tests just to kind of see how the camera handles depth of field, and it seems that this camera can really, like all cameras that are DSLRs, the depth of field perception is going to vary with how close the subject is to the actual camera and how far they are from the background, right? So the closer to the camera you are and the deeper the background, the more blurred you could get it. But this camera location is exactly the same as my 6D, and I'm seeing that difference. So if I had this closer to me, where I was doing kind of like like actually up close, doing like a tighter shot, like a lot of vloggers do, we might get more of that effect. But based on the way this camera is set up now, that's not happening. Another thing for me to consider may be to have like a table stand where I get the camera just a bit closer to me. That's going to change my framing some from what I'm usually doing, but that may give me the effect that I'm looking for. So as I was doing the unboxing, I got a few shots of some of the ports that are on this camera. So you're gonna have a USB and an HDMI out. You also have a microphone in. So right now I'm still recording with my lavalier mic directly into the camera. Now, I did another video on this microphone. This is the Rode Wireless Go. So if you're thinking about getting a wireless mic or a lavalier mic that could work well with this camera, this is the audio quality of that. And if you want to see the full review, I'm going to insert a card above. Now, getting started with this camera had one downer, in my opinion. The battery doesn't come charged. It's absolutely bone dry. So before you could actually get to see how this thing shoots, you have to charge up the battery in full. And it took about 2 hours to get it from the point that it was at to fully charged. As far as the user friendliness of it, it has two modes. One which is like the classic Canon mode, and then it has the default mode, which is kind of made for maybe beginners. It allows you to take control of certain effects that you probably wouldn't be able to handle if you just bought a brand new DSLR, because Canon presents all of the settings pretty much the same when it comes to these cameras. And if you're just getting into photography and you're used to point and shoot, or you're used to your cell phone, you might get a little overwhelmed and start shooting in auto mode, which is not what this camera is really made for. These cameras are made for you to have control over things like exposure time, the aperture size, and those things matter. The white balance, how you're dealing with different shades of light and the light that's being emitted, and not having a good background or understanding of that may just leave you in this state of mind where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna shoot everything on auto. Now, if you are somebody who's shooting everything on auto, that could be a way for you to learn as well, because you could go back and look at the specs of each shot to see what was the exposure time, what was the aperture that auto chose to get this effect. And then you could start kind of recreating looks and feels based on that. Now, I just fiddled around with this camera for the past 10 minutes, so I can't really give it a fair shake, but my overall opinion is that for its price and what you're getting, you're getting a pretty good entry-level DSLR / video camera that can do most of what, you know, an amateur to a mid-level photographer or videographer will want to do. But I would have to dive deeper in using this in more day-to-day applications to say, is this a good starting point? If I had to choose between this camera and the Rebel series, my decision would pretty much be made based on how big of a camera do I want to carry. I feel that they both have the same ability. You're going to probably have more lens options on the Rebels than you do on this camera. Really, it's just a matter of how bulky of a camera do you want to carry with you. Like this would probably be about half the weight of a Rebel. It takes up less size. It might be able to fit into smaller pockets. So if you're looking for something to give you a little bit of control in a tighter frame, this might be the camera for you. If you want to get the feel of a bigger, bulkier camera, and you want the Rebel, you might go that way. I'm not sure why one person would pick one versus the other. I think they achieve the same mission. I'm not sure where the Rebel series is as far as having like the inputs and what technology they're using, but I think for a similar price point, you could go either way. My overall recommendation is that if you have the money to spend and you're trying to get started, this is a good camera for you, especially if you're going to be shooting video and doing a lot of vlogging. This might be easier for you to carry around, get some quick shots, have the control that you're looking for to capture certain effects, and pretty much do whatever you need it to do. If you're looking to do higher end work where you're going to be charging people, I would stay away from this and go with one of the professional cameras with the full frame sensors, like the 6D or higher, because you don't want to be in a situation where your client is dissatisfied and you're working, you know, kind of with subpar equipment. That's just my opinion. Can you take quality photos with this camera that seem professional? Yes, if you have a good understanding of, you know, taking pictures, using equipment, manipulating lighting, this could be a camera that does it all for you. However, you're going to be limited to the crop sensor and the lenses that you can use on this. Now, the L series lenses that are made for the full frame cameras can be used on the Rebel series, except you're going to get a little bit of zoom. Now, the Rebel series and the L series, or the full frame series, those lenses can't fit on this camera. So you're limited to using just the M series lenses for this camera, and there's not many options for that. Now, for all of you guys who are my usual subscribers, thank you for putting up with this video. It's not about real estate, it's not about business, but it does give you some insight if you're interested in starting your own channel. And for those of you who came just to see a review of the camera, please let me know what you thought in the comment section below, as well as my subscribers. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Should I be doing more videos like this? Did it give you enough information for you to make a decision? I'm gonna have links for the lens and for the camera, so if you guys want to go out there and buy it, just use the link down below and it'll take you directly to the product. Thank you again for joining me here at ENTP Life. Take care.